For years, the world was invited into the raw beauty and windswept calm of Raven Seat Farm, where the Owen family appeared to be living out a pastoral dream. But when the show disappeared without a trace and the once vibrant family faded from view, the silence was deafening. Now, 3 years later, Raven Owen finally steps into the light, revealing what really drove her mother, Amanda, to walk away from Clive. Behind the charming exterior of farm life, something far more complicated had been unfolding. The sudden end of our Yorkshire farm wasn't just another cancellation. It felt like a door slammed shut without warning. Devoted fans who'd watched every sheep birth, snowstorm, and family moment were left stunned. There was no goodbye, no final montage, no parting words from Amanda or Clive. Channel 5 moved on with little more than a vague hint at future projects. But there was no clarity. What could cause such an abrupt and unexplained exit? Why silence the voices of a family that had been so open with their lives? To many, it was more than a TV show. The Owens weren't actors. They were a symbol of resilience, hard work, and country grit. The show transported audiences into a world of sheepdogs, stone barns, and breathtaking hills. And then, just as quickly as it began, it all went quiet. A stillness settled over the valley, and what had once been a symbol of unity became a mystery. But behind the scenic shots and rural charm, something had shifted. The cracks, long hidden by the natural beauty of the land, had finally started to show. There had been whispers, rumors that Amanda and Clive's relationship had faltered. They were once celebrated as the beating heart of the countryside, authentic, grounded, and fiercely devoted to their children. But reality isn't always made for TV. While their fans saw an unbreakable bond, those closer to the family noticed the quiet unraveling. The cameras had stopped, but the emotional distance only grew. The very home that once echoed with laughter now stood as a silent witness to a deeper fracture. They were the definition of a working family. Long days spent tending sheep, surviving harsh winters, and raising 9 children in the middle of nowhere, all under the scrutiny of millions. Amanda, with her commanding presence and warm humor, quickly became the face of the show. She lit up the screen with her energy and charisma. Clive, more reserved and stoic, was the steady hand behind it all. But fame is a heavy load. Over time, even the strongest balance can start to tip. As the world watched, Amanda took center stage, and Clive seemed to retreat more and more into the background. Their lives may have looked idyllic, but the pressure of maintaining a picture-perfect image began to take its toll. The very thing that drew audiences in, the authenticity, the openness, also became the weight that slowly strained their bond. Their children, though protected from the public eye as much as possible, were growing up in a world shaped by the expectations of others. And it was Raven, the eldest, who bore the weight of it most. At just 12 years old, Raven stepped into a life where nothing stayed private. From the moment the cameras began rolling, her childhood became a shared experience. She wasn't just Amanda and Clive's daughter, she was part of a national story. While the audience saw a charming, hard-working family, Raven saw the truth behind the edits. She saw her mother struggle silently, trying to be everything to everyone. She saw her father, dependable and deeply devoted, lose the closeness he once had with Amanda. It was a slow shift, but she felt it. She matured quickly. With so many siblings and so much attention on the family, she learned to shield, to support, to stay quiet. When headlines swirled and online gossip exploded, Raven stayed grounded. She chose not to react, not to defend or explain. Instead, she channeled her energy into her future. Veterinary science became her escape. Long hours, intense study, and a new purpose beyond the farm. Even as the internet buzzed with theories and accusations, she kept her silence. Not because she was hiding something, but because the truth was still raw. She had seen her family pulled in every direction by fame, pressure, and the relentless demands of public life. When Amanda made the quiet decision to step away, it wasn't about resentment or revenge. It was something deeper, something raw. A woman who had given herself so fully to everyone else realized she had forgotten what it meant to be her own person. She had become a symbol, the shepherdess, the matriarch, the face of a picture-perfect family. But beneath the surface, something was unraveling. She wasn't running away from Clive. She was running toward herself. And when she finally chose to leave, it was like coming up for air after holding her breath for far too long. Raven saw it coming before anyone else. She noticed the fatigue in Amanda's eyes, the stillness in her voice, the kind of silence that doesn't scream but aches. This wasn't just her mother needing a break. This was her mother slowly disappearing behind the curtain of expectation and routine. But knowing doesn't make it easier. Raven watched the distance between her parents stretch into a quiet, aching void. She couldn't fix it. She could only observe and try to understand. What the public didn't see was the slow, emotional erosion. Not a dramatic collapse, but a fading. Amanda didn't crumble after the split. She didn't give tabloids the meltdown they were waiting for. Instead, she re-emerged quietly, almost stubbornly, on her own terms. She settled into a new life, started exploring the world outside the farm, and began telling her own story, not the one others wrote for her. Still, the media was quick to judge. They painted her as opportunistic, hungry for fame. But they missed the nuance. They didn't see the years of quiet sacrifice. They didn't know the version of Amanda that Raven knew, exhausted, overlooked, yearning for wholeness. Raven had stopped seeing her mother as just the public figure or the perfect parent. Now, she saw a woman who was finally putting herself back together, not for the spotlight, not for applause, for herself. Amanda wasn't reinventing her life to be seen. She was trying to feel whole again. And through the noise, Raven could see that. Clive, on the other hand, grieved in silence. Always a man of few words, he didn't broadcast his emotions. But behind that stoic presence was a sea of sorrow. Even when speculation swirled around their breakup, Clive remained quiet. His heartbreak wasn't a show. It was a slow burn that lived behind his eyes and lingered in his stillness. Raven understood the weight of that kind of silence. It wasn't detachment. It was mourning, quiet and lonely. He missed Amanda. He missed the rhythm they had built together. The simple life on the farm, the shared responsibilities, the certainty. But the words to express that pain never came. So Clive did what he always did. He went back to work. Reuben, always dependable, stepped in beside him, his son becoming his companion in the silence that Amanda left behind. The two of them carried the farm forward side by side, as if motion could hold the grief at bay. But between Clive and Raven, a distance remained. Not bitterness, just space. The space left behind when a family quietly fractures. The space filled by what was never said. Clive had buried himself in routine. It was the only thing he could control. He couldn't undo the past. He couldn't articulate the ache. So, he stayed silent. Raven finally spoke, not to point fingers, but to free herself. Her silence had been a weight, and lifting it wasn't about creating drama. It was about healing. She needed to release the tangled emotions she'd held for years. Confusion, guilt, loss. Her words weren't explosive. They were clarifying. And in her quiet truth, she offered something no one else had. Context. A glimpse into the slow fading of a love that didn't end in flames, but in distance. Through her voice, Amanda and Clive both found something they hadn't had in years. Understanding. Maybe not resolution, but something gentler. Acceptance. Raven's truth didn't just mend her. It offered clarity to two people who had lived too long in silence. Her honesty was like a key, unlocking the grief that had been sitting dormant for too long. And in that honesty, we learned something about Amanda. Not the brand, not the character, but the woman. Though private jets weren't a regular fixture, she did charter flights when family schedules grew too tight. Her business ventures have grown steadily, from best-selling books to partnerships in organic farming and lifestyle branding. She co-owns a line of artisanal goods and holds equity in a rural tourism startup. Her assets are protected by extensive insurance, covering her estate, health, and even media liability coverage that shields her public persona. If there's a financial lesson in Amanda's story, it's this: wealth isn't always loud. Her greatest investment was in autonomy, diversifying income beyond TV, owning her land, and protecting herself legally. Her journey shows that reclaiming identity can be both emotionally and financially empowering. As Raven's words continue to echo, you're left wondering, how many truths have gone unspoken in your own life? Sometimes what heals isn't a dramatic change. It's the courage to finally say the quiet part out loud. Tell us in the comments what moment in your life needed to be heard, not hidden. Until next time, stay curious. The hush of winter mornings still blanketed the farm like nothing had changed. But behind those stone walls, everything had. Raven had seen it all, felt the slow unraveling of something that once seemed eternal. It wasn't that the work stopped. Cows still needed milking. The fields still called. But the spirit that once filled their home had gone still. When Amanda packed her things and stepped out of the family home, it wasn't with anger. It was with the quiet finality of someone who had held everything together for too long. She didn't slam the door. She simply left. And that, somehow, was more heartbreaking. At first, their split played like a footnote, a mutual decision, a practical arrangement. But that was just the surface. Beneath the polite statements and silent retreats was a fracture that had been widening for years. The show had masked the silence, covered up the disconnect. The cameras had caught laughter, hard work, a picture-perfect life in Yorkshire. But they'd missed the long silences at dinner, the tension in the air, the glances that no longer met. Speculation flooded in, eager and relentless. Was it the attention? Was it ambition? Or just exhaustion? Online forums buzzed with theories, spinning stories with missing pieces. Everyone wanted the headline, the juicy twist, the smoking gun. But Amanda and Clive gave them none of it. They chose silence. A silence that, to those watching, said even more. And amid it all, Raven remained the quiet eye of the storm, her voice locked away. Until now. You could scroll through Raven's posts and not know a thing had changed. There she was, smiling at her graduation, posing with colleagues, sharing wellness routines and scenic walks. It was curated, calm, almost too calm. There were family pictures, yes, but none that said too much. None that gave away the heartache. In a way, her social media became a shield, a way to offer the world something polished while protecting what still hurt. Amanda leaned into her new chapter, author talks, speaking events, Instagram moments that painted a life of empowerment and independence. Her brand shifted. She became something beyond the farm, beyond the show. Clive stayed where he'd always been, on the land, grounded and consistent, filming the occasional spin-off with Ruben. This wasn't a scandal. It was a slow sorrow. The unraveling of Amanda and Clive wasn't marked by betrayal or fury. It was marked by absence, by what wasn't said. The way they started to live like neighbors, not partners. The moments when glances stopped holding meaning. And Raven had felt all of it. The unspoken tension at the breakfast table. The emotional weight her mother carried. The loneliness in her father's eyes when no one else was watching. Amanda, once radiant and seemingly invincible, had become quieter. Not bitter, but worn. Years of holding together a public image had left their mark. She had become, in Raven's words, a woman who forgot to take care of herself in the process of taking care of everyone else. And Clive, still strong, still reliable, seemed like a man trying to hold on to a world that was slipping through his fingers. The disconnect wasn't loud, it was lingering. There were no shouting matches, no dramatic exits. Just two people growing apart in real time, in the same room. Raven watched it all unfold, knowing there was no villain in this story. Just two people caught between who they were and who they had to become. That's what makes her story so powerful. It's not tabloid fodder. It's real. It's quiet heartbreak. It's the kind of pain that creeps in slowly, until one day you realize nothing feels like home anymore. And even though she stayed silent for years, her first real message to the world wasn't angry. It wasn't performative. It was honest. It was a daughter finally stepping out of the shadow of her parents' story to tell her own. The world is still waiting for what comes next. But Raven has already said the most important part. She's ready. Ready to share. Ready to heal. Not for headlines, not for fame, but for herself. And that's a wrap on this wild, emotional, and surprisingly relatable ride through Amanda Owen's not-so-picture-perfect life. We've gone from rolling green hills and picture postcard family photos to behind-the-scenes heartache, quiet strength, and one woman's fight to rediscover who she really is, outside the labels of wife, mum, and Yorkshire shepherdess. Along the way, Clive reminded us that not all heartbreaks are loud, and that sometimes love means letting go, even when no one's watching. And let's not forget Raven, stepping into the spotlight not with drama but with wisdom. Her reflections gave us the emotional glue, the bigger picture, the one where real people, not reality TV edits, are navigating grief, change, and messy human feelings. She reminded us that healing isn't always about fixing, it's about understanding. We saw a lifestyle that looked idyllic, yes, but also isolating. A 2,000-acre farm, a bustling household of 9 kids, TV fame, public scrutiny. It all adds up. And when the cameras shut off, real life didn't. It got louder, but through it all, Amanda didn't run. She recalibrated. She got quiet, then bold. She didn't vanish. She evolved. That's a comeback arc we can all respect. So if you've been nodding along, gasping at the drama, or maybe even wiping a tear, go ahead and give this video a like. Seriously, it helps us keep bringing you these real, raw, and revealing stories from behind the fame. Drop a comment. What surprised you most about Amanda's journey? And of course, don't forget to subscribe. We've got more deep dives coming your way.